Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of Ask a Brother podcast. I'm your host, Jeff St. James. And listen, y'all, I'm excited for this week. This is Thanksgiving week. So I know undoubtedly you all are getting excited just to have a day off for those who haven't. We're going to have a day off. And I won't be doing any episode, obviously, on Thanksgiving Day, but I won't going to announce now. My next original content episode is going to be this Friday on Good Friday, which is entitled How to Become a Master Communicator. So you want to stay tuned for that for sure. I have one interview, obviously, tonight. I have another interview lined up for tomorrow. Actually, two interviews lined up for tomorrow and a final interview on Wednesday as well. So I have a jam-packed week. Your boy is going to be busy. So I hope that as you all start to come in, the same thing I had when I met with, what was his name? Philosophical. Dope conversation with that brother. We got to dive into some deep questions, conversations, and all kinds of things. And I think that this is going to be another one of those very, very thought-provoking, deep conversation for sure. But for starters, just a couple quick announcements. Number one, shout out to the subscribers. We are now at 32,191 subscribers as of 5 minutes ago. So again, nearly everybody that's currently a subscriber recently just joined in the last 6 months. So kudos to you all for just supporting the channel in any way that you can. One additional way that you can always show support is if you become a channel member. How do you do it? Just look in the members tab. It's very easy. All the links are in the description as well. If you want to check out our store, if you want to check out our merchandise, you see the hat in the back. I kept telling y'all that pretty soon in the next week or two, a lot of the things that are in the store are going to be gone, and we're going to be putting up some new items, and I'm going to be wearing some new stuff pretty soon. So stay tuned for that, and I think y'all are going to enjoy it. Some of it's definitely for laughs for sure, and I think it's going to be pretty fire. As far as memberships are concerned, I believe it's $2.99 to become a member of the channel. That's the easiest way, other than, of course, liking this video, liking the videos, engaging with them, and definitely use that hype button. If you go to the comment section and you scroll to the right before you click into the comment, you can hype up a particular video that you love. So make sure, if you haven't done so, make sure you support in all the ways that you can. I would hope that by this time next year that we're hitting close to 50,000 subscribers for sure. Shout out to everybody that watched the 3 interviews we had last week. Gotta tell y'all for starting, and shout out to Palm Beach Mike for pulling up, getting the party started. So real quick, y'all, thank y'all for last week. Last week was awesome. I'm thinking about just the types of interviews I had last week, from Dr. Tiasan Johnson to Miss Verlin to Crimson Cure. Incredible guests. I hope to be able to kind of keep that magic going. I think it's all I know is the way that things are moving, things that are happening behind the scenes. I can't wait for episodes like tonight and many more of the interviews and episodes to come. So I see right now we got about 23 people currently in the chat. So if you have not liked this video, please make sure that you do. My hope is that we get the likes up. We always raise awareness about the guests that I'm bringing in. Remember, y'all, I always like to bring in people that I think are thought-provoking, interesting. My hope is that we just get better at becoming better listeners, better engagers of content, and even better critical thinkers. So I'm excited, man. Like, the interviews that I've been blessed with since I've started this channel have been incredible. Obviously, some of you are like, yeah, the interviews are amazing, but what about your original content? I'm trying to balance both. So listen, y'all, stay tuned. Remember what I said. In the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be flying out to Atlanta for a show with Miss Carisha. I think Charleston White is going to be the main act for that. So listen, man, hit that like button. Feel free to become a member if you see fit. And again, if you like the content, if you like this channel, if you like this particular episode, a really easy way is to hit that $. I believe the $2 is the minimum amount for a super chat. So if you like it, we'll greatly appreciate it. But if you're already a member, don't feel obligated to feel that you have to donate anything. So last but not least, men's group. We're doing men's group again tomorrow night at 7 p.m. So if you haven't signed up, please make sure that you do. I mentioned it last week and I'll mention it again. Very soon, I'm going to be following up with some of the guys to kind of ensure that we kind of lock in place potentially what our men's retreat location is going to be. And then after I kind of finalize things, and the members in the group are going to be the first ones to decide if they're going to be locked into that, then we're going to eventually open it up to the public. And it's going to be first come, first serve, because we can't do a men's retreat with a huge amount of guys. I think maybe the smaller the group, potentially the better. So, excuse me. Thank you, Miss Plum, our admin who's currently in the chat right now. She's posting the links in the chat as we speak. So, what do I say every single time, y'all? Make sure that you like this video. Make sure that you share it with 2 to 3 people. And every single time I tell you, you're going to get something out of this video. Just know I mean it when I talk about these interviews, especially. All right, y'all. So, shout out to our today's sponsor, which is Dusable Botanical Farms, for their healthy alternatives to assist you gentlemen in the bedroom with sexual performance and improving testosterone levels. So very soon, I'm going to be giving my own personal review beyond, just the things that I've read and things that I've researched and looked up with the company. Let's just say, your boy is going to be giving some additional information on this pretty soon. So stay tuned to that for sure. So we're going to watch a quick video from our sponsor, and then we're going to hop into today's episode. One sec. Thanks again, Dusable City, for that awesome product. I hope that you all are going to check it out. This is the coupon code if you all want to try your purchase, and you'll get 10% off of your next purchase for sure. All right. So last but not least, I always try to do a reminder of the things I always say again and again. Y'all are absolutely going to enjoy this episode. Two brothers just having a conversation about life and all things that it involves. I think this is going to be dope. I'm excited about it. I've actually been following this brother for the last few months and just binge watching a lot of his content. And I just love the way that he thinks. And I think that when you guys get introduced to him, you're going to understand again why it is that I brought him for sure. All right. So real quick, if you are in the chat right now, you have not liked the video, please make sure that you do. Please make sure that you send it to at least minimum 2 to 3 people. I highly, highly, highly recommend, if you are big into deep conversations, if you are big into conspiracy theories, if you're big into just loving to have higher levels of conversations, I think this is the type of episode that, again, you all are going to love. I mentioned it with Philosophical. I've mentioned it with Dave Anderson. I've definitely mentioned it with a few other people. And again, I'm not exaggerating it. I think you guys are absolutely going to enjoy this. So make sure that you like it. Make sure that you share it with a few people. Feel free, if you start to enjoy the actual conversation, and if you want me to kind of pinpoint and pick out your comment as the conversation is going along, easy way to stand out is to hit the super chat button. Anything from $2 or more, I'm going to make sure that I address it and read it for sure. All right, y'all. So without further ado, because at the end of the day, whenever it's an interview episode, I know that you all aren't personally here for me. So in tonight's episode, we will be meeting with an incredible writer and storyteller who I've been wanting to get on the show for months. With already 16,000 followers on Instagram and millions of views already, he has a way with words that allows his audience to delve through a variety of complex and cultural concepts and leaves us wishing he could make documentaries on life. Get ready for a deep convo of just two bros, that like to think and read and watch the magic unfold. Please help me welcome for the first time to the show, Mr. Django De Gree. What's going on, sir?
Oh man, I'm sensational. I had like a short taste on it then. Wow.
Yes, sir.
That was big. Thank you so much.
Listen, man, I as people start to get to know you for sure, I know that undoubtedly they're going to really love what it is that you've been doing. And I hope that, even just joining my channel, more and more people that haven't heard of you get to hear your voice and hear what it is, see and hear how you think for sure. So before we get started, man, why don't you just kind of let people know briefly, like, where you're from, how you got into content creation, and a little bit about like the books and stuff you've written.
Well, right now I live in North Carolina, and after the whole COVID thing happened, I left Virginia and just moved to Texas. I lived in Austin for a while, then I lived in Miami. I loved Charlotte in the mix, so I just ended up here, and I loved it here. And in 2020, my boy, he was like my co-founder. He was like, "Dude, you need to start making TikToks. Trust me." I was just like, "I don't know, man. That's not me. Everybody dances on there." But then I started making videos, and I mean, like 5 years and 5,000 videos later, I've just cracked the code on just how to make content. But part of it is just how much content I made and how much I've read. And so it's just a beautiful thing. I enjoy it. It's like cathartic for me because it helps me write my books. It helps me through my thinking. So if I wasn't
Mhm.
making content, I'd just be talking to myself.
Yeah, 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 and that lets me know how much I need to start writing too. Because again, shooting is cool and all, but when you got all these thoughts up here, and a lot of times in your social circles, you don't have a lot of people to actually have these type of convos with. I think
Mhm.
that it's time for me to kind of start putting stuff down on paper too. And it seems like every person I'm running into now on these social media streets, it seems like everybody's written stuff but me. So I'm
Oh,
like, I feel
well,
like I'm kind of behind.
well, I got you. We publish books for other people too because I after I
Mm.
learned how to do it, I started helping others and just started building. So I got your back. Whatever you need, I got you.
I will keep that in mind for sure. All right, bro. So let's jump into it. One of the first things that I had peeped to notice, one of my introductory things that I mentioned about kind of starting a book club and
Mhm.
getting people kind of going was 1984,
Mm,
George Orwell, right?
mhm.
What are your thoughts about that book and from Orwell and the parallels you see in society and our politics today?
One of the things I think is interesting about Orwell is that he wrote about what he saw in Italy at the time. Like a lot of people think he was writing about the future, but he was actually writing about what he was literally watching on a day to day. But the thing that's crazy about humans is that when you tell people something is wrong and you start, saying like, "Hey, I'm writing about the problems," people are like, "What are you talking about? That's not happening right now." So the
Mhm,
best thing to do is to write about the future as if the present is happening, and then people will look back and start to see kind of how it happens, or people in the future will say, "Wow, this person could see like where we went." And
mhm,
in actuality, he was just writing about what was actually happening in Italy at the time. And a lot of people don't realize that if you read through his biography, he was actually very frustrated with living in Italy and everything that was happening at the time. And that was the whole concept of the book. But
mhm,
a lot of those books that feel like someone could see the future, they were actually writing about their present. They just couldn't talk about it at the
mhm.
time because people would not be happy to hear, hey, this is what's actually happening right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And also now that I'm thinking about how we watch movies like The Hunger Games and other movies, like they always try to make the dystopian world look so different, but in reality,
Mhm.
there's just so many like parallels between like what we're dealing with today. So even when thinking about the book, is there anything in our current culture and society that
Mhm.
kind of mirrors what you kind of noticed like in 1984?
I mean, like one of the biggest things is like I don't know what's real when it comes to numbers. Like, I don't know if you've ever kind of noticed this, but like, it doesn't matter who's in government. It doesn't matter what company. Like, they put numbers out that they want out, and then they just change them. And that was like one of the biggest things in 1984 that they talked about was like it was this shoe reference where it was like they say that they made 1,500,000 shoes. It might have been 1,800,000 shoes. It might have been 900,000 shoes. Nobody really knows, but everybody knows that half the people don't have any shoes. And
Mm,
so, in turn, it was really just about confusion. And I remember I watched Eric Weinstein like podcast. He was on Chris
mhm,
Williamson, and he was like, "What if the whole point of this is like just to confuse people?" Because sometimes I
mm,
wake up, man, and I'm like, I'll Google something I remember seeing like 2 years ago, and I can't find it. I'm like, I swear this happened. Like the whole
mhm,
Mandela effect. I'm like, I remember this, and I can't
mhm,
find any information about it. So I feel like
mhm,
that's like the biggest thing. It's like it's almost like it feels like it's meant to be confusing to people, and that's what happened a lot. Like, nobody really knew the truth, not even the people who were writing their own numbers, not even the guy who was the main character who was destroying stuff every day. He couldn't even remember, and that's what I
mhm.
think is the realest thing.
I agree with that, and I think we're n I think that well, I'll bring up Donald Trump for this reason. I
Uh-huh.
think that Donald Trump running for president the first time
Mhm.
kinda ripped the Band-Aid off for a lot of people in terms of the illusion of what they thought politics was like, where there's still obviously people even today that's like, "Oh, red team, blue team, my
Mhm.
side's better than your side," right? But back then when he first ran against Hillary,
Mhm.
he kinda gave the game away. He
Yeah.
kinda pulled the curtain back, right? And he was like, he was like, you talking about me paying taxes or not paying taxes? He was like, you could have changed it at any time, but I know you won't because of who pays you. And he was like, and I've paid you for campaign donations. So he was like, and that was when it hit us for a lot of people who really didn't understand truly how corrupt it was. And with 1984, I think in hindsight, rereading 1984 now my second or third time, I see it everywhere. I
Mm,
see it with the news that I feel like for the most part can't be trusted. I see it with compromised fields that's supposed to have integrity and protect the public. A great example of this is like our trust in the big pharma, right?
mm,
So you'll have the news that tells you safe and effective. Why would you doubt the experts? And then right after they're done giving their spiel, it'll be a big pharma commercial that comes on,
mm,
some drug or that, something that they're kind of pushing or promoting. And now in hindsight, I'm looking back and it's like 1984 was almost like the revealing that you couldn't almost trust anything. You
mm,
couldn't trust anything. And the more and more that I think about it and seeing like who owns all the textbooks, who creates the curriculums, who runs all these different industries, I'm looking in hindsight and I'm like, bro, I honestly think like we're so far in the weeds that what you said and what Eric Weinstein said, I think is accurate.
mm,
I don't think it's what they show us and tell us that's actually the worst things that's going on. I don't think it's the everything that's blaring on the news.
mm,
Sometimes it's true and oftentimes it's not. That I don't think it's the worst thing ever. In my head, I think it's the things that they don't tell us. I
mm,
think it's the things that they kind of keep from us.
mm,
And my only reference point of knowing something's going on in terms of in-house in our country is when you look at other countries' standards in certain domains,
mm,
educationally, food, water, what they spray or don't spray in their air, and a lot of that, what they put in their cereal, a lot of that stuff is banned. But here, FDA says it's cool.
mm,
So that's my first lens of like, it seems like every major field that is supposed to kind of ensure certain things in terms of our safety, I don't totally 100% believe that anymore.
mhm,
And like you said, all they got to do is change the rules. So it'd be
mm,
like, oh well, this much of this product we can allow in there, this much of this ingredient, even if it's a little poisonous, it's not that bad. Like I think they're all in on it. And Noam Chomsky talked about like it just gives us the illusion of choice within the spectrum. And within that spectrum, you're allowed to have lively debate. And because
mm.
you're debating in this lively debate, you actually think that you have choice when you don't. Um, uh, Two-party system. Um, what are your thoughts about the two-party system that we have and people's level of understanding about the concept of the duopoly as of 2025?
Well, I think, like, just to take a step back right quick, because I just wanted to make a point. I feel like what's really strange is that similar to 1984, I think that 99% of people are just doing their job. And, like, in a
Mhm,
weird way, jobs and, like, what's actually best for people have become, like, 2 different things. It's like, I'm just here doing my job, almost like, the manager who's like, "I'm just doing my job. I can't help you. I can't do what's best for you. I know what I should be doing, but, like, I'm just doing my job." I actually think that runs kind of all the way through. And then when you think about it, like all the way up to the two-party system, I think people have just settled into the sides that they live in. So like when you think about scripts, like there's this concept that I love by this guy Claude Steiner, where he talks
mhm,
about like there are scripts that we run, ideas that we have about life, that there's good, there's bad, and we live in these stories. And I feel like the two-party system ended up becoming two parties because we don't like to have six choices. Like in general, it's not
mhm,
helpful. If I give someone five options and I say, hey, which of these do you want? Typically they'll actually feel very overwhelmed. If you're like a realtor, one of the tricks they say is to show three houses, one of which is an easy no, so that then a person feels like they made that first decision. So,
mhm,
like in actuality, I almost feel like a lot of the things can be tied back to like human nature of what we really want more than anything. We want ease. We want an easy story. We want something to believe in. We want the same
mhm,
concept, the idea. Once we start like deviating from those things, it becomes very frustrating. Like there's a reason that movies
mhm,
are the way they are, why they show that duality. It's like we're all as much into the game as without realizing it, because it's not enough to just hear a new idea. You need someone to say, hey, here's the new best thing, because these are the bad guys now. This is the Jedi
Mm,
versus the Sith. This is good guys, bad guy. This is Harry Potter versus he who shall not be named. This is good guy versus bad guy. This is right versus left. This is good guy versus bad guy. It's us versus them. Like,
mhm,
our brains do not like it. Like, I remember when I was first trying to maybe think about, like, well, what if it's not a good versus bad? And it's like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do now? I didn't have an answer, and I didn't like that I didn't have an answer. I was like, I don't have an answer. Like, nothing's fitting now. Where's the duality? Where's the other side? Who's them? Who's they? So I feel
mm,
like in some ways, people keep trying to fight to almost create a third side, but really they're just like trying, they end up just being at war with both sides typically.
mhm,
Like when somebody who tries to be independent, the right or left or whoever is, going to
mhm.
get hurt the most, is like, you realize you're hurting us, and it's us versus you now. So that's kind
Yeah.
of where I think it's like, actually, I think like when you really take a step back, you start to realize we can't like help ourselves to some extent, because we love those stories, and we hate when people take those stories away and don't offer a new story for us to live inside of.
Bro, I love what you just said about how we've been primed and conditioned to only view things as a binary choice,
Mm,
and that it's either good or bad, right or wrong.
mm-hmm,
So, and I've been coming up against this both in this space and also in my personal life where, and you notice it. It's same thing with the Matrix. It's like every time you critique something or you bring up an idea or you bring up a contradiction on the side that somebody lands on, culturally, socially, politically, even religiously, you see this visceral reaction, and now they kind of now see you almost as like the enemy. And
mm,
like you said, they've been primed to where independent thought and voting and people don't exist. You're just on the other side. So
mm-hmm,
it's like if I bring up something about Biden or the Democrats, could have voted that way my whole life. The moment I say something, oh, that means you with Trump. And I'm
mm,
like, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Like, and it doesn't matter because in their worldview, like you said, the movies, the shows, the way in which politics is covered here,
mm-hmm,
it's not like the UK with multiple different parties. It's literally good, bad, and both sides are trained and taught that. So
mm-hmm,
if you try to critique the conservatives or the right, oh, so what you a leftist now? Oh, so what you with the liberals and you got with this agenda that? And I'm like, in my head, I think that people were honest. I actually think most of us are functionally independent. We
mm.
just feel like we have to conform to one side. And the things that we disagree on, we tend not to talk about those things out loud or publicly. Am I like off or on with something like kind of with what you were saying?
I actually think in some ways though, like, it's not even, hmm, like, I don't really even know how to say it, but
Mhm,
I found that people want to nest with their crew. Like, you want to know how
mhm,
you belong. So like when I first started going into like reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and Napoleon Hill and all these others, I found a new tribe, and it was us versus this other group. And then
mhm,
eventually, as I spent more time with them, I realized like they were also not critically thinking beyond a certain point. Because when I started asking certain questions, people didn't have answers, but they were like, "Oh, so you're with the other crew?" And I'm like, What are you talking about? I'm not with any crew. I'm just asking questions." Like, and the thing you're describing with right and left, like, I actually think that like, it's actually, you're almost saying things that are starting to come up to the walls of like a person's belief system about life, about reality. And
mm,
you're in some ways almost like it becomes an attack against them, because if it turns out the story I'm believing isn't true, that means I got to find another story. And that's actually really
mhm,
scary. So I've actually done a lot more to just ask people questions and allow them to communicate their ideas than even try to argue an idea. Because I realize the
mhm,
second I say something that I'm in opposition against or for, like, they then take their side of whatever it is that they want to describe. It doesn't
mhm,
matter what I say. So all I do is ask questions now. I'm like, someone's like, "Oh,
mm,
Django, what do you think about this?" It's like, honestly, I'm not sure. Could you actually tell me? I don't know much about it. And they're like,
mhm.
"Oh, well, let me tell you." Da, 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 da. And I'm like, "Oh, wow,
Uh,
where'd you hear that from?" "Wow, I saw it on Facebook." "Oh, wow, that's crazy. You
that
should check
reveal
that."
I love that strategy. And I actually am starting to figure out how to apply that in my regular everyday life, personal life.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Doing it on podcasts, I at least get paid for it.
Yeah.
Um, but doing it in your personal life is actually exhausting because again and again and again, you're right. When you're pushing people mentally and emotionally to the limits of what they've been taught they're allowed to go to,
Yeah.
they have this visceral um need to kind of defend their ideology and defend why they voted or moved or believe what they believe for so long. You see it especially with like religion.
Mm.
Um, being if anybody who's gone through a religious deconstruction process, they probably experienced this, where if you grew up in a certain religious or cultural environment, the moment you start questioning these things, you start seeing the whole other ugly side. And I loved how you articulated that. They're feeling like you're pushing them into an area they're not comfortable with. And
Mm.
all you're literally doing is just bringing up something that perhaps they never thought about or they never mentally or like emotionally wrestled with.
Yeah.
And it is definitely jarring for those of us who, I'm not one of the people that's like, oh, we're so awakened or we're so much more evolved intellectually than everybody else. It's just there are people that never really questioned anything. They
Yeah.
they they really, and for people that don't know, when I use NPC, a non-player character, this is the concept of like if it's a video game, you're playing a video game and you have your main player, and then
Mm.
there's other characters in the video, but they're more or less like the background characters. They just have their role, they're just existing, they're not actively actually choosing to do anything. And a lot of times I think a lot of people, there's people that say like as high as 70+% of the population of the globe in the country kind of functions more or less like NPC characters, where where they were born, who they grew up around, that kind of dictates most things about you.
Mhm.
With how you vote, how you move, potentially how you dress, how you carry yourself, who you hang out with. A lot of it isn't as much as choice, as much as you've been conditioned to think you can only be and do and think a certain way.
Mhm.
And when people that kind of mess with what you thought you were taught to do, mess with that,
Mhm.
they internalize it as an attack.
Mhm.
So yeah, man, I love that you explained it that way. So in terms of the duopoly,
Mhm.
uh, what do you think about it? Is it really truly a duopoly? Is it semi a duopoly, or do you really think like behind the scenes these people are definitely on the same team, definitely working together behind the scenes?
There's a thing called cause blindness. And like this concept of cause blindness is you start to look at symptoms and you think that that's the actual cause when in actuality it's just a symptom. And that happens a lot. Like if you, I think a good concept of that is like with a doctor, they're looking at your symptoms, they're trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the cause of this? And they may actually confuse a symptom with the cause and then
Mhm.
misdiagnose you. Right. And I think a
Mm.
lot of people have cause blindness when it comes to like their role in in a process. So, like for instance, I actually believe, like when I was in Austin, a lot of the people I knew believed that, hey, if we just get all these hotels for people, they're gonna move in there, homeless problem solved. And then when they did everything the way they did, because in their heads they're like, well, if I was homeless, all I want is a hotel room. When people then immediately left and went back to the street, and they were like, well, clearly clearly we must not have spent enough money, or clearly it must have been like their belief is the
Mhm.
cause is that these people just don't have what they need, and if we just gave them what they need, it would solve the problem. I think the problem is more like nuance in that. I also think some
Mhm.
like I have an aunt who just like loves being homeless. She doesn't want a home. Every time we try to get into her home, she just leaves, and I don't know why she does, but like she just, this is like her life and her process. So what I think actually happens, all that to say about like concept of duopoly or like why people do things, I think it's like the joke of a Karen just being a manager and doing her job, just like extended. I think everyone gets so caught up in like, I'm in Congress, I'm in Senate, I'm on right, I'm on left, I'm this, I'm that, and that they create like a world around that, and then they believe
Mm.
that they're solving problems, and then when they don't solve the problem, they blame the wrong symptom for the problem. And it's just like us living out stories again. Like I think there's a story of good versus evil, and then people put themselves in that story. One side thinks they're good, other side thinks they're good, and they're both fighting each other like, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys, we
Mm.
need to get what we need done. And then at times when it's like, oh, I got to get this thing done, I'm willing to reach across the table to get this thing done because I need it. Then yeah, I'm just doing what is it, the lesser of two evils, or I'm just doing what needs to be done to get it done. I don't know that people are really like thinking everything through as much as they're living out these scripts of good versus evil and like
Mhm.
playing House of Cards because that's the story they know in their head, if that makes sense. Like they're playing a
Yeah.
game in their head. Um, I think it's just that simple with everything. I think every time I sit back and I'm talking to someone and I'm surprised by how they're acting, I think about a story they might be telling themselves, and I'm like, oh, actually, no, that does make sense. Like, oh,
Mm.
it does make sense why people in Congress act the way they do. It does make sense how Like
Mm.
Nancy Pelosi made like $100-something million and is like, I never insider traded. I'm like, yeah, she probably doesn't think she ever insider traded. Like, did
Mhm.
she trade stuff that like could be questionable? Yeah, but it wasn't insider trading. I believe she believes herself. I say that
Nah,
to people all the time. People on my
y
Instagram. I
yeah,
believe you believe you. I'm not disagreeing that you believe yourself. I 100% believe that you believe that. But
yeah, yeah, and you know what? That makes sense why people get so tribal, because
yeah,
they genuinely, truly believe whichever side of the aisle they're on the side of good, right?
100%.
A and the problem with that level of cognitive blindness is that when you really believe your side is quote unquote the good guys, when
Mm,
your side is doing bad or evil or wrong, you have to come up with an explanation for it, right? You either ignore it, you downplay it, you say, "Well, what about isms? What about the other side?" Right? Or they're
absolutely,
trying to do the best they can. Like there's always going to be like
absolutely,
a mental like mechanism to like
100%.
explain away your dirt or your side's dirt, right?
Bro,
Yeah, go ahead.
think about how the Jedi like, I like to tell stories, like, so on my Instagram, you'll see me just telling stories in a way that almost comes off as, like, a joke and, like,
Mhm.
"Wow, that was funny," but then it, like, ties back into a concept of right now. Think about how the Jedi basically were like, for the greater good, we rip kids away from their parents. They come here. We teach them non-attachment. We are not attached. We are the better group. We are fighting the Sith who want to do bad. They're evil. We're fighting them. We are making sure government stays strong. We're rocking out. You find out that the Senate might be a Sith. Did you call up and say, like, hey, maybe we should follow the protocol? No, you pulled up 4 Jedi strong to assassinate the senator. And then when it didn't work out or whatever, it's like, see, we always knew they were evil, but like that whole process was crazy. But we don't think about it that way because we all
Mm.
think about Jedi as good guys. But like, think about that process. They took a kid, brought him from a desert, left his mom in slavery. They were like, "Yo, kid, stop being afraid." Then they were like, "Yo, why can't we control the kid? We got to figure out how to control the kid." They
Mhm.
were afraid the whole time. The kid is like, "Hey, I need some help." They're like, "We can't help you." The other guy, who let's say he's also bad, he's like, "I'll help you. I got you, bro. Just trust me."
Mhm.
They just made mistake after mistake. Sent him to Lake Como with the woman of his dreams. It looked just like his mom. They would have known that if they had actually paid attention and brought his mom back. And so when you think about it, it's like this whole group at the end of the day, they weren't necessarily good guys. They were just like really dogmatic,
Mhm.
almost good guys. Like they were really dogmatic guys, like they weren't they weren't actually good. So like I just say that story in mind because I'm like, we all think of it as like good versus evil because of how bad the Sith were. But when you break down like what the Jedi were doing, we start talking about it like that. It's like, do you just get to pull up and take somebody out because you think they might be a Sith? You hadn't even confirmed.
Yeah.
You didn't follow the process. Now the process doesn't matter to you. Oh, we're fighting a war. Well, we're now generals. We're just gonna fight this war on these other countries, and we're gonna do it for the people. It's like, and that's where I just like, that's what I say is like, that's what I think is happening left versus right all the time. People are just like, oh, he's my
Mm.
home guy. We're the good guy. Did you see what the other side did? Did you hear about what they did? This is why we have to do it. Because if we don't, you know what's going to happen? They'll get in power. Do you know how bad that would be? Oh, man, we
Mhm.
got to do it. So
Mhm.
that's why I just like, that's where I crack jokes about this stuff in part because like when you actually think back on those stories, you can start to see some of the similarities in our own stories, like through popular culture, and especially how people created good characters to do things where you're like, if I didn't think that other side was bad, I might be kind of questioning what this other side is doing. Like
Mhm.
that was questionable. You definitely shouldn't have run up on him like that. That doesn't make any sense. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just thought that I
Great,
had.
great. Nah, I've definitely thought like you did, where I started going down the rabbit trail on YouTube and watching different reaction videos and video analysis of the Star Wars entire
Oh
trilogy or
yeah.
whatever. And it blew my mind when I realized there were other people that had the same questions and thoughts that you did, where it was like, is this really good versus bad? And and I think that's the thing where, if as an example, if most people watch these type of movies, especially that one, and they
Mhm.
just assume one side's the good guys and one side's the bad guys, I won't be shocked if that's how they approach their normal life,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
So I won't be shocked or surprised where in their heads, like, and again, guys, for those who was all watching, the only way they really get to this point of being able to be like truly moving closer to being an independent free thinker is reimagine, just as a concept, hypothetically, that the other side is right about something. Just imagine that they're right and you're wrong. try to prove to yourself how they would be right, and try to prove to yourself how you might potentially be off. And
Mm,
that's the beginning stage of becoming a much more objective thinker and analyzer of information.
mhm,
But if you go in and constantly go into conversations, debates, politics, anything that you're doing, if you constantly go into it with the presupposition that you're already by default right,
mm,
you're going to have such a much more difficult time of having a nuanced critical analysis of A, if you're actually wrong, B, if they may have a legitimate points. You're approaching a conversation covering up your ears. You've
mm,
already decided this is the answer, and anybody that doesn't say what I want to hear is automatically wrong, vile, evil, whatever you name it. And it's like, and the great example is like, they'll be like, the other side is fascist. The
mm,
other side is acting like dictators. They're pushing for censorship, and I'm like, you don't. So I would give, like you said, blatant examples of censorship on the other side, and they're like, well, that was for safety. And I'm like, 1984.
mm,
1984. Like, where they
mm.
just don't, oh, what's going on, Bruiser? What's happening, good brother? Appreciate you checking in. So, real quick, y'all, I hope that y'all are starting to enjoy this conversation, because we're going to start diving even deeper in terms of like economic stuff and additional things that I think is going to be very interesting for sure. So, if you haven't, if you came in the last 15 minutes or so, make sure that you like this video. Make sure you send it to 2 or 3 people, especially people who tend to love deeper conversations, higher level intellectual conversations, where we can just kind of just go on a tangent and just kind of just rock out with us. So if you haven't liked it, please make sure that you do. Please make sure that you watch it. I mean, make sure that you share it. Make sure that you like this. Make sure that you hype the video for sure. And don't forget, if you're not a member, feel free to hit that $sign and feel free to donate your $2, $3 or whatever it is that you feel you can to donate and support the channel for sure. We would greatly appreciate it. All right, bro. So keeping in mind with what you said about how people are typically trained to analyze information and view a lot of stuff through like good and bad, right and wrong, holy and evil type dynamic,
Mhm.
I actually think that mindset, or that type of mindset, I think that applies to why we argue so much about the best economic approach to dealing with our societal issues.
Mm,
Socialism, capitalism, Marxism, it seems like we're constantly fighting, both domestically and even globally, about what is the best approach economically when it comes to operating in modern society. So, like, what are your thoughts about those concepts, especially in light of the whole good, bad, right, wrong, um, economic policy wise? What are the flaws of these models, and what's your honest opinion, having kind of assessed or thought about them? Like, what do you think about all of that?
Well, I got this book over here by Adam Smith that is like what people reference as their belief in like free market capitalism. And at the end of the day, like most people don't believe in that concept at all. I read his book. It's a monster of a book, actually. If you guys hold on, let me see if I can pull it out right here. But it's
Mhm.
called hold up. See, I like to I do read. Like sometimes people get on my Instagram and they're like, "You need to read something, bro." I'm like,
Yeah.
I read a lot. But this book right here, The Wealth of Nations, he didn't even really say capitalism. He was talking about it. What he had as a problem when he was in that time frame was
Mhm.
that there were large multinational corporations that were in bed with the government to basically be able to run monopolies. And he basically was saying, "Hey, you know what? People should have the freedom to do the things that they want to do individually." And what I think is interesting is like that's not the world that we live in. And I think in some ways, like people just use the terminology capitalism, but it's like there's nothing capitalist about what we live in. Like at the end of the day, the government and companies work together to do different things. And I'm not saying it's right, wrong, however that process is, but like it's not free market. If it was free market, like uh companies could be held accountable to the extent of what they did rather than getting a fee that's less than what they caused a problem for. You know, like if people went out and they were actually allowed to trade how they wanted, I wouldn't have to go through the government for every aspect of everything I've tried to do for all of my businesses. If it was
Mhm.
free, like I couldn't I would be able to go start a like phone brand and not be wondering if I need to be what's it called carbon neutral. But people fought for that because then it keeps like there's all this like it's not free at all, and for the most part we're not really allowed to just go do stuff that we want to do. You're not allowed to just
Mhm.
go get the healthcare you want. You're not allowed to like it's all very constructed. So what I say is like there's two sides basically fighting for their side to get to do the thing that they want. So like whether you're doing tariffs, which is what Adam Smith hated, whether
Mhm.
you're doing subsidies, whether you're doing like raising tax on the rich, raising tax on the poor, whether you're doing tax cuts, those are all taxes on someone because it takes out of someone's pocket and just gives it to the homie. So whether it was Trump, Biden, Bush, Clinton, it's like, I want to pay less. I want them to pay more. And that to me is the problem with the
Mm.
system because every person who comes in is promising, I'm going to do something for my people. And we're going to, we're going to implement this thing, a tariff. Adam Smith hated tariffs. That's not capitalism. So, like, that's where I think, like, we're two sides basically fighting typically
Mm.
for my side getting more out of the system than the other side. And the only thing that
Mhm.
happens is the government gets bigger because, like, that's what happens. You start doing tariffs, we gotta track the tariffs. We're gonna do, a tax cut, we gotta track the tax cuts. We're gonna do, the tax law gets bigger. Another tax, like, people don't think about, TurboTax is a tax because I can't do my
Mm.
taxes. So I have to pay $100 to find out if the government took more money than it was supposed to. So now I'm paying
Mm.
money to find out what money I was supposed to get back because the government purposefully doesn't do their taxes right every year. Like, how is that possible? If I make $100,000 for the
Mm.
year, I pay my taxes throughout the year. How are we finding money? Why is it that complicated? Well, I have to now
Mhm.
pay a company that exists. That company is basically like a government entity. Is that not the case? Like, if your job is to help me get my money back from the government that I'm owed, it's like, I don't know, man. Like, I keep trying to tell people, I'm not really arguing on either side because I think both sides are a little bit disingenuous in the fact that they want the government to help them. I don't want the government to help me. I want it to leave me alone. I'm over it.
Mhm.
I don't want to be bothered at all. I don't want tariffs. I don't want tax cuts. I want the tax laws to decrease. Like, I want there to just be less. I want you to just remove them, remove
Mhm.
complexity. But
Mhm.
that's my thought process about, like, what we actually live in. I want capitalism for it. I just want it to be free, and I want people to be able to do the things that they want to do. And
Mhm.
I don't think we have that at all.
Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate that. In light of our duopoly conversation about the whole, especially with Noam Chomsky, about the whole, if you want a full population, just uh, you know, kind of rigidly kind of give them their options within a very spectrum, but allow lively debate within it. I think
Mhm.
it's actually the same thing on a global scale, believe it or not. I
Mm,
think when we have these particular economic models,
mm,
I actually think that they're illusions.
mm.
And I'll explain what I'm thinking.
All right.
I think that the illusion of this economic model is the most ideal. Um, exactly what you just said. At some point in time, it's going to continuously lead to an expansion of government,
Mm,
expansion of government's role in your life, in terms of power and control. The relinquishing of more and more of your uh, rights, privileges, freedoms, etc. I feel like it's always going to keep leading to it, and I think it's inherently set up in such a way because I think that when you give human beings power over other people, um, it's just unlikely for most human beings, I think, to ever want to give it up and ever want to be in a position to where they can have that taken from them.
I
So,
think
so now the goal, whether it's a capitalist system, socialist system, Marxist system, it's then designed. Now the goal is, regardless of whatever model you kind of find yourself in, how do you convince the population that they need this one and then demonize the other perspectives? In high in this is what I mean. I think the freest thinkers are probably the people that's kind of mentally, in terms of politics, probably in the middle, where they kind of look at their own lives, they look at what's being presented, and sometimes they say, "Oh, I think I'm gonna lean a little bit over here. You know what? This makes more sense for me over here." And you're kind of mixing and matching based off of your unique needs, what your neighborhood, what your environment needs for that particular season or year of your life, right? I think it's the same thing with economic models, where when once there's a model in place, there's two different opposing ideas of whether or not that model is good and we need to keep going with it and keep expanding on it, or we need to go the exact opposite direction. And I think that's actually also what's happening. And I think the central theme, whether it's more primarily capitalist in nature, primarily socialist in nature, primarily Marxist in nature, even by the sheer definition of taxes literally is the antithesis of capitalism to some degree. I think that in the end, you still end up paying.
Mhm.
You still end up having to give. You still end up, and it doesn't matter. You're going to keep being. If you get in any model, there's going to be another opposing side that's telling you about what's wrong with that model and how you have to adjust and how you have to make modifications. Or you have to go to the opposite extreme. And
Mm,
I think the people at the top have
mm,
figured out the game where they've shown you when you move closer to um, uh, crony capitalism at the top and how things are getting more expensive for us, trickle down economics. The people at the bottom are like, this isn't working for us. We want we want more social safety nets. We want this. We want that. And
mm,
now you're pushed. So crony capitalism is pushing you to want socialism.
mm,
It's pushing you to want to vote for a socialist in New York. And I'm like, yeah. So it's like, even if you, like you said, if we removed as many taxes, if we removed as many things as possible, now the social safety nets are gone. And
mm,
now they was like, this is what capitalism brought you. Now everybody's dying in the streets, and now you this, and now you can't. Now there's no police. Now there's no firefighters. So if you want this or what, so I feel like we're stuck in a limited lens where we have to treat these not necessarily in a binary way, but
mm,
they basically kind of made it seem like you really only have two to three options with this, and it's
mm,
either as much closer to libertarian approaches to things,
mm,
or and you have no safety uh of any kind. You're kind of on the wild wild west on your own, or you
mm,
have to fully embrace and trust whatever the government has to offer for you.
mm.
So before I move on, what you think about that?
I think like in this book I wrote, They Lied to You, one of the things I make a point of is that there was a generation, my grandfather's generation, who had nothing. Like, when he came out of like abject poverty and was a sharecropper, to have a job meant a lot to him. And then as time went on, like our lives became more about the jobs that we have, and we view ourselves through those jobs, and we view
Mhm,
ourselves through making money. And I think like jobs have actually kind of separated us from connection. And so in
mm,
turn, like everybody wants guarantees. So one of the guarantees was like a pension. Now the pension is gone. Well, now I need Social Security. Now I'm on retirement. Now I need like this Medicaid. Because you're afraid, like, what if something happens to me and nobody's here to look out for me? Because it's not anyone's job to look out for me, right? Like, I'm not, like, we've gone from a space, like, for instance, in Japan, where people pick up their own trash to like, well, that's someone's job to pick up trash. We've like abdicated the concept of taking care of each other. So of course we're always looking to the government, because who else is like, if something happens to me tomorrow, who's going to take care of me if my family doesn't? And maybe my family
mm,
doesn't want to, because like maybe they won't, and
mhm,
it's just
mhm,
like that's where I just kind of think like in our heart of hearts, we want to guarantee that we're going to be okay in a worst case scenario. And so in turn, we're actually like reaching into our own pockets constantly in the hopes for guarantees. Like I was talking to my dad about this the other day. I got my healthcare thing the other day. I'm looking at healthcare. I'm like, why is this so expensive? Like, how can I afford this? But then I thought about it. Everyone's 401k typically has healthcare in it. So if you have healthcare in your 401k, your hope is that your 401k goes up. So my healthcare is going up because my 401k is in healthcare. So when I look at my 401k, I'm like, yo, my 401k is up, but I'm also paying like $900 a month for the healthcare because it went up, because my healthcare is like, and then I'm like mad at BlackRock, but at the end of the day, my 401k is rolled into a mutual fund that's rolled up into like another thing was rolled up into BlackRock. And like people are
yeah,
like, BlackRock owns everything. It's like, yeah, but BlackRock just owns everybody's 401ks and pensions. And like we're all kind of strangely connected, but thinking we're
mhm,
not. Like we think there's some kind of separation, like, yo, the healthcare people. But like the healthcare people just want to keep their job. And the healthcare people keep their job by making my 401k go up. But then as my 401k goes up, my healthcare gets more expensive. But I'm mad my healthcare is more expensive. So I'm mad. So I, like before you know it, you realize like because you keep trying to cut things off as if they're separate, if
mhm,
you just really take a step back, you realize like it's all connected, and we're just none of us are willing to give up our guarantee. Like if we can get enough of our homies
mm,
together, we're gonna fight for our guarantee, whatever that is. If
mhm,
it's
mhm,
free buses in New York, if it's like my healthcare getting cheaper and everyone has it now, if it's guaranteed housing, whatever it is that I'm trying to get for my people, like that's what we keep doing. And then it always takes from another thing, but we're not willing to accept the fact that like that thing took from something else. You know what I'm saying? That's what
ah,
just hits me all the time. Like we want it to be separate, but it's not. It's all connected. And we're typically
mm,
benefiting on one side of the side that's hurting us in the system, at least. I don't know. That's just me. As it's like I think about it all the time, especially because I'm not
bruh.
poor.
Nah, that's it. Like you're rocking me, man. Where it lit everything that we complain about is connected to things that we want.
100%.
Ooh, I didn't, man. This is why I'm happy here. Listen, y'all, if y'all are in the chat right now, make sure that you like this video. If you haven't, make sure that you hype this video up. Make sure that you support him for sure. This is Django for sure. So again, man, like I, the way that you just articulated that, it's everybody's like this. A great example of this is the border, right?
Yeah.
Where same exact concept where you have one side where they're like, oh, we should welcome these people, we should take care of them, da 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 da. And that's
Mhm.
like, all right, well, how do we do that? That like we can't just take care of them just like with hopes and wishes, and we got to actually pay for it, right? And then it's like your taxes are being reallocated for that, but then
Mhm.
you're complaining about things your taxes aren't going for, and you're like,
Mhm.
and I'm like, this stuff is integrated, and I'm like, I'm starting to wonder, man. I think the libertarians, with some minor tweaks, I think the libertarian approach may, the more and more I think about it, the more and more I realize that the concept of government in and inherently of itself is not set up to stay contained.
Mhm.
It's not something that once it's released to the public seems to be able to kind of stay within the parameters of what it's supposed to. There's always going to be new situations, there's always going to be a new issue. You have to think about that dynamic of, not that dynamic, that line between personal rights and freedoms and autonomy versus the needs and rights of the community and the society. And it's like, well, how do you protect yourself in terms of as a nation? How do you
Mm.
protect yourself on a local level? Is every person now walking around with a gun? Is everybody required now to get certain training? Like, does everybody got to go back to growing their own food? Like, we're in a modernized world where everybody can't do everything.
Mhm.
And I think I think the reason why we argue and fight so much about this stuff, especially in terms of the role of government, is not so much that we're terrified of what the other side would get with having all this power. I
Mm.
think we're actually terrified of the idea of what our lives would be like and what we would resort to if we had less government. I
I can
I
see that.
I think a lot of people are petrified and I think people love the idea of the government being used for what they want, that what they personally want the government to be used for. I'm like, "Oh, you have your top 10 list of things that you care about,
Mm.
then and when the government's in place and they're doing those things, you think it's great." But
Mhm.
if the government's not doing what you don't want them to do, or they're doing the other side's agenda, now you think it's the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And I think that's, as bad as that is, at least that's something that in their head is kind of predictable. What's scary
Mm.
is if the role of government actually shrinks. So for instance, most of the a lot of, not all, but a lot of the things that the government is, bloated budgets, overspending, crazy corruption, a lot of things were happening and existing prior to the government's role in it. And now, like, so in my head, like, even the idea of like, um, you'll see things that are failing, and when people talk about, well, maybe we need to re-envision this thing, or maybe we need to reduce our spending or our taxes going to that because we're throwing money into an empty hole that's not filling up. And people would rather cling to the thing that's failing than completely giving it up and saying maybe we need a whole fresh new start. They rather cling to what they know than to the fear of the unknown when it comes to like this type of stuff. What you think?
I think that, to take it just a step further to what I
Mhm.
actually believe at the core, because I just wanted to Google this right quick. I think people are really afraid that we're gonna realize that, like, the whole thing is, like, just kind of bogus. Like, right now, we're, like, $39 trillion in debt. Like, as a concept, 39 trillion, like, it's just not a real thing. It's just
Mhm.
like we're not paying 39 trillion. Like, we're 39 trillion, like, we spent 39 trillion more than we had. And, like, simultaneously, people are like, "Why can't people balance their budgets?" We live in a world where we don't believe in balancing budgets.
Mhm.
Like, I really think the thing that's the most scary to people, one of my favorite books in the world, it was a big shift for me. It's called How Real Is Real by this guy, Paul. And like what he said was is that language is a conspiracy theory. Language is
Mhm.
useful. It's not true. It's why I think large language models are such an interesting concept, because people think that we could build something that's knowledgeable and real based on a thing that's not real.
What
Like
was the book
language,
called?
How Real Is Real by this guy, Paul Watzlawick. And like the first half of the book is fire. Second half of the book I never finished. But the first half of the book, one of the points he makes is that language is useful. It's not
Mhm.
true. It's a
Mhm.
conspiracy theory. You and I are agreeing that the sounds that we're making, that we go, like it's hitting a perspective that we hold, that we believe we share. But if we talk long enough, we may find out that we weren't actually in agreement this whole time. Like it's why people fight all the time. Somebody says something and they take it to mean something because of how a person looks, based on like how a person's dressed, what they believe that person's side is. And
Mhm.
like what's crazy is what I really think people are like the most afraid, like more than anything, is to
What?
find out that it's actually like the Matrix when bro pulled up on the architect and it turns out the architect planned the whole thing out. He planned out the red pill, blue pill. He planned out the idea of making a hero. He planned out the whole thing. This is the 6th time that he's been there. This was
Mm.
planned. And then he's like, I've done this 6 times. And here's your
Mhm.
chance. You're gonna go back on the Nebuchadnezzar, and then you're gonna pick 25 people, and we're gonna run this thing over again because that's the point of this whole game. And like I really genuinely like sometimes I sit back and I think to myself, and I'm like, when I talk to people and I really like let them talk, you realize eventually they want to stop talking because they're like, I've never gotten this far into the game before. I've never had to explain why I think $39 trillion in debt doesn't make any sense. I've never had to explain why why I believe what I believe or why my side is smarter than the other side. Like most of the time we just argue, like because it's parallels, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like I think the best, like this was a rant, but like this is how I finish it
Mhm.
off. It's
Mhm.
like somebody walks up to you and says, "Hey man, I'm trying to find out which way is north. Can you help me?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, bro. Sun rises in the east, sets in the west." And the dude goes, "No, no, no, stop, bro. That's wrong. Sun doesn't rise in the east or set in the west. It actually is in the middle of the solar system and we're floating around it. So you're wrong." And then if I'm like, well, not really, technically, and then we start arguing about that, bro. That's not a useful argument. The point of emphasis was he was just trying to find north. I think the problem is that, like in most cases, we're not agreeing on where we're trying to get to. We're actually just
Mhm.
trying to prove whose perspective at this moment is right, and both perspectives are true depending on what's useful. It's true the sun is in
Mm.
the center of the universe. It's true that like the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. It's true that that the earth is rotating on its axis. All of these things are true. All of these things are also partially false, but all of those things are useful for a certain type of conversation. So like what we're
Mm.
having is like conversations like, oh, 39 trillion in debt. What are we going to do? Oh, we need to do tariffs because we need people to come back. Oh, we need to have a bigger military because what are trying to do? And I'm like sitting back like, you guys are all arguing things that are like partially true and partially false, and we're not agreeing on like what's useful.
Mhm.
And what's really useful is realizing that it is kind of all a game. That's just where I'm at. Like it just at this point, I just can't believe that people are taking it serious. You can't. I can't believe that $39 trillion of debt is serious. I can't. I can't believe you're gonna look me in the face and be like, Django, look, we're just gonna raise the debt ceiling, bro. We're gonna go 45. It's okay.
Mm.
It's like it's all gonna work out because our assets to debt ratio is great. Who calculated what the assets value is?
Mhm.
What do you mean who calculated that? That's what the assets are worth. But like, who's buying them?
Mm.
What do you mean? Like, who are we in debt 39 trillion to? Well, everyone's in debt to everyone. Oh, okay. So we played a game where we all took debt out. Okay. Who's
Mhm.
paying though? Like, how does it work? What happens if like the interest rate gets higher than the debt ratio? Yeah, Django. I have no idea. Why don't you tell me? Like, that's
Mhm.
where I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I think about it, and the more I think about it, I just think people just are really afraid that they're gonna find out like it doesn't have to be this way, and like now you could pick something else, and that's like I said before, what am I supposed to do now? Like, can someone tell me what to do now? I don't know. I don't know. That was a little
Wow.
bit of rant. I'm sorry, but that was
This is why you're here. I love that thoroughly, bro. In terms of like, oh my god, you said this piece about like people are more focused on proving that they're right
uh-huh.
than actually what's the actual goal of what we're supposed to be working towards. And what you think about with the debt ceiling is what I think about with paper currency. Pretty much
Yeah,
think
yeah,
the same thing where it's like, okay, so this is a piece of paper, there's
hmm
some ink on it,
hmm
it's not backed by anything,
hmm
and its value goes down every year.
Very
And
true. It is.
we'll spend our whole lives trying to accumulate something that's decreasing in value the older it gets and we get.
Yeah, but I
And
mean, like, but it's also not even like it's not even really about the money. It's about what the money can buy to some extent. A lot of people could get what they want if they just tried to be friends with people who had what they wanted. I told a dude yesterday, he
Hmm.
was like, "Man, if I just had this amount of money, I'd be able to travel more." I was like, "Word? What are you trying to do?" "I'm just trying to fly to these different places." I was like, "You know that if you become friends with a pilot, they have extra seats that they're allowed to give someone, so you could just fly on standby." And they were like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah." So like, what if you traded the work you're doing and they gave you that? Like, you found someone who's single, then you'll do your content for them, you'll handle all that for them, and then they'll like let you fly for free. Now you don't need money. And they were like, "I
Mm.
never thought of that." Like, we think we need money in order to do things. Money just buys people's time and buys and buys assets. But like, you could buy assets for nothing. That's how Virgin Air started. Bro sold tickets to a plane he didn't have and then
Hmm.
used the money to get the plane because he knew that people wanted to fly. So if he created the flights, then he could but you don't need the money to do anything. We just like believe you need the money. The accumulation of
Mm.
wealth is like confusing the menu with the meals, like what Alan Watts used to say. Like, you don't need like money. Like, if you're trapped on a deserted island, if I told you like, "Yo, I'll give you $1 billion right now, but you'll be on a deserted island for the rest of your life," like the accumulation of wealth makes no sense because you can't eat money. You do nothing with it. So it's like the
Hmm.
money has no value outside of what you can do with it. Like, too many people are caught up on the concept that they need the bread. You don't need the bread. You just need to find what people value so that you can get what they want, what they want. I mean, you can get
Hmm.
what you want by trading what they want. Money's supposed to just
Hmm.
make it easier. We just make it
Yeah,
so
yeah. Yeah, now it's like, man, I feel like we all need to learn more trades, skills, and bartering again, especially with just the uncertainty of like 2030 and digital ID and all this other stuff. And it's like the way in which these companies are announcing every week thousands and thousands of jobs that's going to be given up. I'm like, I know that it's freaking out a huge percentage of the population about what's on the other side of all these job losses, and we can't replace all these people's jobs. Like, and AI is growing. I'm like, man, this is great, man. So real quick, y'all, if y'all have not liked this, please make sure that you like this video for sure. In particular, make sure if you haven't done so, become a member. Please send this to 2 or 3 people. I'm about to ask some additional interesting questions for sure. Mercantilism. You're the first person I've ever heard use this word. Please break it down for the audience. Like, what is it? And just expound on it. Like, what is
Yeah.
mercantilism?
So mercantilism is what Adam Smith talked about when he was talking about capitalism. So the world he lived in, the tea, what is it? The India something tea company basically had a contract with the government. They got a charter. And so they basically ran a monopoly. And so that basically led to costs of tea going up and they could just do whatever they wanted because they were in bed with the government to be able to just do whatever they wanted when it came to tea because no one else could compete. And so mercantilism is this concept where the government in conjunction with companies works hard to put in like tariffs and really believes in this concept of the accumulation of gold for the power of the country. But in general, it's not very good for people. At the end of the day, it's like that's what we live in. That's why we're doing tariffs right now. That's why we're doing all these things. We need to accumulate the wealth and we need to have more wealth for ourselves and we need to, make it harder for people who are outside of the country to be able to do things. And
Mhm.
I mean, it's just the other side of the same coin. It's like, like people got mad at the stimulus package because they said we borrowed money in order to go out and do, basically to give people money in their pocket. But then Trump's like, I'm going to do a tariff and then I'm going to pay everybody a dividend. It's the same thing. You're just redistributing. It's redistribution of wealth from the government. It's not a. And I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. I'm just saying it's the same thing I said before, where the government picks. People want the government to pick them to get something that they didn't earn per se. Whether you're left,
Mhm.
right, center, like people love that. I got a check in the
Mhm.
mail. I was like, "Can I return this?" Because I couldn't return it. So okay, I guess I got to spend it. But it's like people really want a guarantee at the end of the day more than anything else. And mercantilism sort of creates some of these guarantees because then the government is sort of working with the companies to basically guarantee how this whole thing is going to be set up. So even if it's not working, government can keep running it. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter. Like, hey, a company goes out of business if they run it. Like, one of the things I think about all the time specifically in Flint, they changed the water system up. I don't think anyone did it on purpose. I just think like they did it. They changed the water system up because somebody
Mhm.
was like, "Yeah, we'll do it." They didn't do the right testing. The government basically has the lead come off in the water. Who's gonna fix it? If it was a company, like company would have been held accountable to some extent and probably would have paid the money. But there was just we don't have the money. Government did it. Hey,
Mhm.
okay, well, like, what are we gonna do to fix it? And that's like, again, it's mercantilism. It's like you can't really see the difference between the companies and the government because they just sort of hand in hand figure out how, like, hey, what if we put in this thing right here, and then, to send jobs overseas, because then everything will get cheaper. Oh, that's a great idea. We'll give you money to go overseas. Sick. Couple decades later. Hey, it's really terrible having all these businesses overseas. You should charge a bunch of money and make everybody bring them back. Oh, you're right. We'll do tariffs. Like, it was just we paid
Mhm.
money for people to go overseas, and now we're paying money for people to come back. Like, we paid for both. So, you know,
Mm.
that's like like in general. There's a little bit of a rant, but
Nah,
yes, basically government and companies working together.
nah, that's a good breakdown, and that explains why I think companies can stay so powerful, and be treated as if they're too big to fail. It's because they're all in on it. They're all in on it behind the scenes. They're all working together, and it's fascinating to see. What's wild is knowing so much of their laws and agendas are created in the boardrooms of these companies, where they like, oh, here's the campaign donation, and here's our list of things that we want to see in the next, policy or law to make sure we on the same page. And the whole time, like, this is why people complaining about the cost of healthcare and wanting politicians to do something about it is like fascinating to me. Like, who do you who do you think, like, how do you think they were allowed to get that big? Like, you do realize that, like, there was a period of time where you had the freedom to not get fined or have to have health insurance. You could
Mhm.
enter into the marketplace if you so saw fit. And now it's not really a choice. And it's been rigged to where it's like, not only do they have a certain amount where they can artificially increase the amount on the cost of all of us and the companies that are paying for it, but then simultaneously it's like, but they can raise it to such a degree to where even when there's an excess or lacking of how much they can make in terms of the gap of what they're getting from us as payers, now they could just argue for subsidies, which just takes the money from us anyway. So I'm like, that's pretty much how most corporations, especially the big ones, kind of function for sure. But I did want to segue, man, into music.
Mm.
One of the main things that kind of popped out to me was your ability to kind of jump into like just the depths of I remember you talking to like Kanye with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time. And there was a few albums that kind of came out this year, and my top three just in hip hop alone. Right now, I'm constantly listening to Wale's album, bro. I think it is
Yeah.
incredible. Offset had a really great album,
Yeah.
and Tory Lanez, his album, I think it was one or two. He's been releasing so many projects. Earlier this year, he released an album. Um, what are your thoughts about any of those albums? Let's start with Wale's album. Have you listened to it? What do you
Yeah.
think about it? I I think I can't stop listening to it right now. What you think?
Well, I just wrote a book on it because I love Wale as an artist, and I also think he speaks to a lot of our issues with perspective in general, and like what people's
Mhm,
perspective was about him. And I think this book is like the a closing loop in regards to like his journey and his ability to communicate so effectively. And so I would just say it's a beautiful album. It's incredible, but it's also like very dense and very complex. And I think that's the part that just like drives people crazy because it makes you think about like, what is he saying? Like, how do what is this love song that's hate love? What is this deeper story? What is CC White? Like, I think it's just too much for a lot of people. It's difficult. So, but I think it's a beautiful album, as I do all his albums. So, I like it.
mhm,
And then the Offset album's great. I'm listening to Odile a bunch right now because I love R&B.
mhm, mhm,
Um, I listen to everything. I tell people all the time, like, the reason that I'm able to listen to everything is I treat every album that comes out like someone ran up to my car and threw their CD in it. Like, threw their CD in my whip, and I just put it in. Like, if
mhm,
I listened to that Wale album and that was a dude who was staring at me out the window, I'd be like, "You gotta get in the car, we're gonna be rich." If, like, the last Drake album had come out and that was what someone handed me and said, "Hey, man, you're gonna love my music." The new Offset, the music's great. The problem is our nostalgia about what we think is good, and it blocks us from being able to enjoy just how beautiful everything is. And that's just like, for
mhm,
me, it's like every time I turn on the song, I'm like, all right, this dude, X326 said, I gotta bump his album. And I'd
mhm,
put it on. I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. This song,
mhm,
wow. It's not me being like, oh man, this isn't the Wale that I loved. Instead, it's like, oh man, this is another great album. No
mhm.
background, no thoughts on like what he was supposed to be or what he was supposed to do. I'm just here
Oh,
listening to music for the first time. That's just
yeah. Yeah, and in keeping with that, although I listed some of these albums, uh, there's hip hop sales have been declining, right?
Mhm.
Globally. And what do you think is the current state of both hip hop and like music genres in general in terms of impact, I guess? Because and the reason why I'm asking this is I think that through most of American history, I've noted that music was always kind of a huge factor in swaying public opinion and moving people certain ways and capturing like the environment, not just capturing the environment, capturing like the atmosphere and social climate of the time. And I've noted with I think with reality TV, the internet kind of decreasing our nostalgia, not even just nostalgia, our view of artists and celebrities is kind of diminished because I think we're now much more in proximity to these people. Where in the past, pre-internet, I felt like, movie shows, those were the stars. They're
Mm.
far off. Like everybody's screaming for them. And then now it's like with the internet and everything, it's so much easier for us to kind of see them as just like human beings. And I think a lot of that, like that grander view of putting these people really high on a pedestal in our eyes is kind of like decreased. And I don't think that we view celebrities or artists quite the same anymore, and I think that may be impacting, like, music's approach to impacting culture. What you think?
I think that there was a period of time where music and movies allowed for us to escape into a belief of like what could be or what it would be like to be something. So like in some ways, you're right, like a Michael Jackson or a Whitney Houston or something, like to only see them every now and then, you're like, wow, how beautiful is this? But I do think like it is a more Western, like American issue in this way,
Mhm,
where like with hip hop, I think that there was very much like a braggadocious, like what does it mean to be, like this big artist who lives this life that almost seems larger than life, and it was as much about the lifestyle as it was about the music.
mhm,
Like it's you I have to believe the lifestyle, even if the lifestyle is not real. Like Sabrina Carpenter at the end of the day, like I don't think there's an expectation of her fan base that she has to have a certain type of house or do a certain type of thing. But with hip hop, it's always been like this. It has to be the whole story that we see in you in order to believe it. And I think
mhm,
that's
mhm.
like because at the end of the day, man, like right now, Bad Bunny is
Big.
humongous.
He's
One of the
big.
biggest artists like of all time
Mhm,
because people in Spain and in Mexico and in all these different places, they love his music and they love like him as a person who they identify with. I feel like the problem right now is like people identify in a very fractured way with hip hop, like and it's become very much like us versus them to sell albums. Like we saw that with
mhm,
Pusha T, we saw that with we saw that with this like Summer Walker album that dropped, like where she was all like being crazy with like Rich the Kid and this whole thing. Like I just feel like there's more of if there's drama and people feel like, oh, I'm with him or I'm with her, that's a better way to sell albums than to just make good music and people are like, man, I really love the music. Like a lot of
yeah,
people when I made my Wale post didn't even know Wale had made music, but Wale's not beefing with anybody. Wale's just kind of
mhm,
doing a circuit, talking to people, having a good time. It's
mhm.
not I hated this guy and that's why I did the album. Like we kind of love that in hip hop specifically. I will say, like, it's
Mhm.
a very specifically hip hop problem, and most people don't identify with that the way that Black people specifically identify with this Black culture. I won't say Black people. Black hip hop culture seems to curate this like competitive atmosphere, which it is what it is, but it does push, I think, a lot of people away from the music. That
That
whole
makes
like
sense.
that beefing, fighting, like it's just like, bro, I'm just here to listen to music. Like I,
Ah.
I was talking to someone the other day. I was like, "What do you listen to?" And they're like, "I just get in the car and I just play the same playlist I always play." Like I don't really listen to anything new. Like it's only hip hop
Mm,
where like, "Oh, it's my guy. I'm a West Coast only. I'm a East Coast only. This is Atlanta only. This is New Orleans. These people aren't from here." Da, da, da. I think like that separation is what causes fracturing, and then that fracturing makes it impossible for us to sort of build on top of like a person who is the biggest, if that makes sense.
mhm. Nah, I agree with that. And although I agree that it's definitely changed how much we're kind of maybe listening to it or engaging with it to the same degree when were growing up,
Mhm.
I have noticed on the female side of hip hop, the promotion of like sexual degeneracy. Now, to be fair,
Yeah.
this wasn't new, right?
Yeah.
Like going back to Little Kim and Foxy and others, like this was happening 20 years ago, but I don't think it was being pushed to the degree that it was. I in my head, I think it was like they were seen as more anomalies at that point. Whereas now it almost comes off like it's very, very, very difficult for ladies in hip hop, um, especially especially when targeting like the urban community, for them to not have to push some type of form of like degeneracy to some degree. A, do you notice that? And B, what do you think are like the ramifications of like pushing ladies that brag about like robbing men and drugging men and using men for all that they want and not what was Summer Soul? She was going through all this chaos stuff and she was like, I think what was her song? I just might be a 304.
Mhm.
Like that's where we are now. Like, what are your thoughts about why that's happening and who's kind of pushing that?
Have you heard of the concept of Overton's window?
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that like we're just watching what happens with Overton's window. Every
Mm,
year it gets pushed further out. Like when Elvis started hip thrusting, they arrested him. Like just as a reminder, like Elvis was, they said if you go up there and you thrust your hips, we're taking you to jail. And he was
mm,
the person at that time pushing the envelope. Like
mhm,
every generation recognizes that there is a lot of, what's the word? There's a lot of um double standard of like I do this, but I act this way, but I tell people that I believe this. And
mhm,
so then you have music typically turn into this space where people start to say a quiet part out loud that is true, maybe partially or somewhat, but you have to push it further and further to piss people off a little bit more. So you think about it, starts with Elvis doing hip thrusts, then we get to like let's say Britney Spears, we got midriff out, then Madonna and Britney Spears kiss on stage. You have Lil Kim, she's a level, and then Nicki Minaj takes it another level, and then Summer Walker takes it another, and then the next person going to take another level because it's just about extending it further and further to push people to have to make a decision
mm,
because people won't make a decision. Like if you have to stand the hardest part about making really good music and just
mhm,
releasing really good music in hip hop is that people
mhm,
just typically don't listen. Like if it's just
mm,
music, people aren't gonna go look for it. But if there's a problem, if there's drama, if there's degeneracy, people are like, "Can you believe this degeneracy?" Like that's what Eminem was, right? At a time, it was like, "Can you believe what this guy is doing? He is the end. This is it." People are picketing. That's marketing. When it was 50, it was like, "This guy got shot. Are we really gonna allow our kids to listen to this?" They were
mhm,
picketing. They were showing. So now I just think like this has been the problem specifically. Like even for instance with Sabrina Carpenter recently, she's
yeah,
like going on the BBC. She's like, "Y'all not gonna let me crack my joke." Like hers is more subtle overall, but like
mhm,
on our side, I just think we're put like it just keeps getting pushed, and you have to push further because it's not enough just to be talented. So the songs got to get nastier. The songs got to get crazier. Otherwise, like if you just did another one of the Lil Kim joints, it's just kind of like, I mean, yeah, we heard that before. But if it's like
mm,
when I was stripping, I took him for every dollar he had, then people might be like, "Oh, what does that mean?" I don't know how much further we can go. If I'm being honest with you, like I
mm,
at a personal level, sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what the next step could be. But it seems like people reinvent themselves to go farther and farther to the degenerate side
mhm,
because it does drive people. There's a book called The Courage to Be Disliked. It's one of my favorites. And one of the things it says is like the thing that's worse than being liked or not being liked is people not caring about you. And I think a lot of people
mm,
are scared to not matter. And so oftentimes what they talk about with kids is they'd rather act out than to not matter. Because now
wow,
you're like, rather than just being average, I'd rather be the problem child. And I think for music, sometimes where people would just disappear, they
mhm.
just go further and further and further.
Nah,
Um,
nah,
so
yeah, and that makes sense, and I do think that the internet, social media has it's kind of like it's accelerated that process. You're totally right that everybody talks about that really loves music. The talent was different. The talent was required in earlier
mhm,
generations to like be able, especially to have a consistent audience for sure. And over time, talent became less of a priority as much as could you stay in the news cycle?
mhm,
Could you get eyeballs on you, right?
mhm,
And the cheat code way was kind of like shock value, sex appeal,
Mhm.
how raunchy, how crazy you could be. And again, this happened in rock music and other genres, so this is not necessarily 100% unique to hip hop per se. My concern is a lot of people are talking about stuff like black fatigue
Yeah.
and the degeneracy in this community or that. And when you're growing up at a time when you were growing up, and I like me when I was in high school and I was listening to 50 and Kanye and different artists or whatever, I look back in hindsight and was like, for the most part, I didn't really see myself really trying to emulate or try these things. I just really loved the music. But at the same time, I can easily see people who literally are. And like you said, Gen Z, they've only grown up with the internet. They've
Mhm.
only grown up with social media. So their view and lens on the importance of trying to model these things and actually attribute it to like as an aspect of their identity that they're actually trying to be
Mhm.
way more likely of like you said, that whole concept of like not mattering, not being somebody, not people never remembering you. It I think all human beings have probably thought about that, but I
Mhm.
think that that's been hyper accelerated in the minds of the younger people who kind of have grown up with these devices, have grown up with this stuff all along. And I think it's contributing to so much of what we're talking about in terms of violence in the community, gender war. Actually, I'm gonna ask you about that. Your
Mhm.
thoughts about this whole concept of the gender war? Like, A, what do you think it is? B, how did it start? And is is this even an actual problem?
Well, so this is what I'm actually gonna make a point of. There's a guy called Guy Debord. He wrote a book called Society of the Spectacle in the like 1960s, and he basically spoke about where we are now,
Mhm.
which is like the spectacle is this like nightmare of imprisoned modern society, which ultimately expresses nothing more than its desire to sleep. It just wants to get to the next state. And basically, like his work went on to this guy Jean Baudrillard, which talked about hyperrealism. And the
Mhm.
concept was basically that we stop actually being connected to people. Like the economic system was going to just keep isolating us until we got to the point where the only thing that mattered was the images like between us. And
Mhm.
and so the thing that's interesting, like about the whole concept of gender war, most people are not actually in a gender war in real life. They're
Mm.
in a gender war online. Like I run into like a lot of the dudes I know who might be, oh man, women this, women that. If they're in front of a woman, they don't say anything for the most part. A lot of
Mhm.
women who say like I'm only down for this kind of guy, this or that, are also with dudes who like aren't fitting those things. It's like
Mhm.
a world that exists in social media. And at the time, like they didn't know that's what it was going to be. They didn't know social media would exist. But what they were basically describing was social media, a world where like the image of things matters more than the actual reality that we live in. So people are like disappointed
Mm.
and depressed about reality because they feel isolated, but all they're doing is living in a space that's not even their real life. It's like this, it's
Mm.
this spectacle. That's why the book's called Society of the Spectacle. It's a spectacle. Like Summer Walker and the whole thing she's doing, spectacle. Cardi B and Offset, spectacle. All of these things are just like most people's lives are not like this. But like you have
Mhm.
to live your life like this because you have to keep escalating the spectacle because people want to just be entertained. Like it's just about entertainment. People want to be angry about stuff. People want to be like have their side. So like we further and further make the world spectacular and make it seem like there's all this fighting. And then when you actually get into a space with people, you realize like they're not fighting until there's like a camera on. Then it's like, oh, do you see how
Mm.
argumentative we are? Do you see how like how much beef there is between us? Do you see like the I don't know, remember like with like Fresh and Fit and some of the other shows, like it's like, do you see how much people are fighting? Like the vast majority of people are not even having those conversations. You put two people
Yeah.
who like are on complete opposite sides of the spectrum as far as possible to create a spectacle for us to be entertained. And then it makes you feel
Mm.
like there's a war, but there's just like it's not really a war in general. It's just like it's a war in the spectacle, in like
Mhm.
in the space of social media, if that. Does that make sense? Like it's like
It does, and I'm like, I gotta buy this book. Well, first of all, you've been dropping bars with just the books alone. I'm like, I'm gonna make sure I review this and get these titles down. This is probably the first one for 2025 that I mean 2026 that I'm probably going to go through out of the three or four that you've mentioned.
yeah.
Because this one, I think, with the type of work we're doing,
Uh-huh.
this sounds like something me and all content creators need to actually see to better identify what's happening, how we're being utilized, and how we're affecting the community, the population. And that's probably why I've been so intentional about not doing so many of the recommendations and things everybody tells me you need to do this because you're gonna get the views and you're gonna do this.
Yeah.
Listen, you and me both know how we can gain 100,000 subscribers by the end of December between
Yeah,
now and then.
100%.
You're on a you're getting views, you're getting clicks, you're going viral multiple times. I don't think I haven't gone viral to the degree that you have, but it's enough to where you pretty much see what gets the clicks. You see what
Mhm,
gets the views, and in your head you have a line that you're not going to cross. I'm
mhm,
the same way, and a lot of people in this space, and people don't realize it. That line doesn't exist.
mhm,
Line doesn't exist. So for them, at the end of the day, the ends justify the means. Their view is if I make the money, if I get
mhm,
the clout, if I get the exposure, it F what it makes my community look like, or how it makes us as Americans look, or if this further makes men and women potentially legitimately hate each other. It's like cats really are approaching this thing. And the reason why I think Obsidian, when he was on my channel, he's the first one that I've heard say that this whole even concept of the gender war, it never really was seen in as such until men started talking. It
mhm,
wasn't seen as that. Like it went like women have been talking our whole lives in person at the hair salon, on the talk shows, on the radio stations, and the blogs, on the magazine. Women have always been talking about their perspectives in different areas of what they liked or didn't like in their relationships with men. That was always a given. And men in private, I'm sure, did the same. It wasn't until men started, talking about this stuff on social media. Now it's a war. Now
mhm,
it's a chasm. And I think that men and women are bringing up both legitimate concerns and
mhm.
also things that they've been conditioned to think are as issues that aren't really their issues,
I
right?
feel that.
Right. And then the secondary piece is every single entity or corporation that can monetize that,
Mhm,
they know that more you're going to get more views, more clicks, more advertising, and more money on people arguing and fighting than people talking about how do we unify. That's just the same thing with hip hop, same thing with shows, movies, these type of discussions. Me and you are having a really deep, thoughtful discussion. If we spent half this time like talking about like um using the craziest words possible or bringing a woman on during a call-in show to just humiliate her, it's going to go way further.
mhm,
We know this, and it's like me entering into this space, and I've felt like you're kind of approaching it the same way.
mhm,
You want to be entertaining, you want to be thought provoking, but you're not allowing yourself to go too far into the weeds to where I feel like you're being used
mhm,
as a tool to make things worse in the long run.
mhm.
Is that would you say like that's how you've kind of approached social media? Social media?
Yeah, I would say that. I would also say this, like, 5 years ago, I started making content. I was not very good, but I spent a lot of time making content. And then I read a lot of books, Eckhart Tolle, David Goggins, Brené Brown, Tony Robbins. I
Mhm.
read, like, the books, Jean Baudrillard, Guy Debord. I read Letting Go by Michael Singer. Like, I read the Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, Letting Go by David Hawkins. Like, I have read so much that when I
Mhm.
make content and I talk, I think people can feel that there is like something very like almost crazy about how much information is in my head. And when I speak,
Mhm.
I speak in a way that like gives people new information to do things. Like that takes time.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that we have in the world that we live in is like a lot of people don't want to take time to become really great at their craft. To become so
Mhm.
good that when people like read my book, I hope you wake up, or they lied to you, they're like, wow, I've never thought of these disparate ideas, whatever. Like this took time. The same way like Michael Jackson practiced making music with his dad since he was 3 years old, and he became Michael Jackson. Like that was
Mhm.
practice. He wasn't born Michael Jackson. He became Michael Jackson through practice, like, and
Yeah.
that's the thing I think like social media allows people to like within a vacuum become very famous very fast for being a spectacle. This is like what Guy Debord and Jean Baudrillard were trying to like, they could see it.
Mhm.
Capitalism rewards spectacle because people at the end of the day like want to be entertained. There's two ways to entertain people. You either get so good at something that when people hear you sing like Whitney Houston, you're like, holy crap, I gotta sit here and listen. Or you go the Sexy Red route or like whatever, where it's a lot of spectacle. It's not to say that like it's wrong or right. It's just the two ways. It's a lot easier for a lot more people to not practice. It's a lot easier to be Ty Lopez and do a
Mhm.
video in your garage with your books behind you and then your Ferrari and your Lambo than it is
Mhm.
for me to be in my room where I've read like at this point maybe 1,000 books to where I talk about
Mm.
these ideas and people are like, wow, I've never thought of that. I'm actually gonna think about that. Oh, I'm gonna like, I'm gonna read on that. Wow, I
Mhm.
never thought about it like that. I read so many books about how to communicate with people in a way that makes them feel less defensive so that I don't
Mm.
hurt people's feelings. Like how many people are taking time to try to do that? And so
That's
like that's
right.
where I would like that's the problem we have right now. Everybody wants to be famous. Everybody wants to get big. So it's easy
Mhm.
to get big if you're a spectacle. It's
Mhm.
harder to get big if you spend 5 years reading as much as you possibly can and trying to learn as much as you can about humans so that when you show up and I start speaking, I want to be like the Whitney Houston of content creation.
Wow.
Like I want to be like I want you to go every time people hear me talk, they're like, Jesus Christ. Every time I hear him talk, it's like something I just never thought of before. Like holy
Mhm.
crap. Where did he even think it? Where did he read that book? Jean
Mhm.
Baudrillard, the Marxist, but I thought that book was terrible. Oh wow, Society of the Spectacle. Wow, who knew? Singer. Oh man, who heard of that guy? Like that's just like where I am at this point. Like that's where I don't blame people for that because I understand that like that's what the society rewards, and so it's cool. I'm not going to get mad at you for it. I see why you do it, but I
Mhm.
also recognize like what do I want to do, and I want to
Mhm.
be the best. And that's like when I write these, like people are like, how do you write these books so fast? I've read so many books. When I sit down with like ChatGPT and I'm trying to pull all my ideas together, I get all my ideas together in an outline within about 10 minutes, and I just
Mhm.
write for like 3 hours. And now I got like 90 pages,
Mm.
So I don't know. That's just
Wow. I
it's a
appreciate
step.
it. Listen, bro, I appreciate it. And listen, if you're in the chat and if you're new just coming in, I see some people just saying they're just now joining. Make sure that you like this video. Make sure that you share it with 2 or 3 people. And make sure you go back and rewind if you haven't done so, because I'm already enjoying this. This brother's been dropping some dimes. He's been giving some book sources. Let me pull them up real quick. How real is real?
Paul
Confusion.
Watzlawick.
Yeah, man. Disinformation and
That book's great.
communication. He had The Courage to Be Disliked. He mentioned way more books than I have currently available to share for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm telling y'all, like, think of it this way, man. And I'm gonna pull mine up as well. So I think that especially being, brothers in this space, I don't know that a lot of people are used to us actually doing this. Like
Yeah.
actually, like I think people are used to us in certain ways, just doing reactions or talking about pop culture just in general, but it's like it's not that you're just sharing information, you're actually pulling it from something. You're pushing you're you're doing something that's actually cultural to me. Where like for me, I'm trying to get people to start reading this book,
Oh yeah.
When Men Behave Badly, other books, and I'm like, there was an era where the idea of pushing the Brave New World from Huxley, there was an era where like people were not really pushing this stuff. It just wasn't like the thing to do. And like you said, if you want to stand out, if you want to be unique, you kind of have to um be just a spectacle. And it's like, first of all, I don't mind being a spectacle at times or having a little shock jock. Somebody mentioned Charleston White. Yeah, here
Mhm.
it is. He acknowledged it. Like the way he approached politics, the way that he approached getting in front of microphones and it being in front of state, it wasn't until he added the shock value just to even get the attention. And
Mhm.
then the things that he read and he learned and he had studied, he then kind of try to hit them with that stuff as well. And I
Mhm.
appreciate the fact, man, that like there's guys like you also in this space who's pushing for literacy, pushing for people becoming well read again in an era where we're like addicted to our phones and the internet.
Mhm.
You're trying to almost get us to like slow down and just yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, I did an article. So, like, on my Patreon, I've been writing all these different articles, and I wrote
Mhm,
my book. I have my book. I hope you wake up and they lied to you. And like, one of the things I started to realize is a lot of people want information, like I said, to be right. So, like, there's a want to be right more than even to be happy. Like, people want to argue because what matters most is just being right. And AI has basically gotten us to a space where if you ask it a question in a very specific manner, it's going
mhm,
to respond in the manner that it believes is going to make you the most happy, right?
mm,
It's like a person who's a people pleaser, but like to the greatest extent. So people are only getting more in larger and larger echo chambers because of AI in general, because it's like most people don't actually take the time to try to understand a concept. They just want to hear how they can better defend the concept that they have. Like that
Yep.
point I made earlier about like, does the sun actually rise and set, or is it just in the center of the universe? Is it like so many of us just want to argue a point that we're not even trying. There's no usefulness to any of it. Like there's no usefulness
Mhm.
to most things. That's like, I think the hardest part for me is realizing that like for a lot of people when I was arguing with them, like there was nothing else here for us to do other than to argue. Like that was the whole point of the conversation. We're not even going to do anything about what we're doing. I have a new rule. I have a rule. I do not argue with people about things that I'm not going to try to solve. There's very specific things I'm focused on:
Mm.
foster children, orphans, literacy, like creating content that actually connects people.
Mhm.
I like basketball, but like if we start arguing about something that at the end of the day, when we finish this conversation, neither of us is going to do anything about, I don't talk about it. Like I just like I'm
Wow.
not doing it. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like because we're just doing a theoretical thing. It's like we're just here to argue for the sake of arguing. We're not even
Yeah.
trying, like, you know what I'm saying? Like there are people who literally have no interest in voting, have no interest in doing anything, but they'll pull up on you and be like, I want to argue with you about who's going to be president. Why? Because you just want to
Mhm.
argue. Like that's the whole point. So
Mhm.
for me, it's like I take the step back and I'm like, I want to be a person who's coming forward with solutions that they're actually willing to try to be a part of. Right. So that's for me: orphans, foster kids,
Mhm.
literacy, creating books, and then creating content that actually connects with people, that has a meaning, that's useful. And
Yeah.
that's it, you know? So,
Nah, I
you know.
I I really, and you gotta realize, bro, like, of course there's other people trying to do what you're doing,
Oh yeah.
but in terms of your platform and how fast you're growing, I appreciate that that's what you have in mind, and that's where your morals and values are with this space, because again, it's very tempting, where
Oh yeah.
the opportunities are there, that like you can easily double or triple the amount of people that's following you and engaging in your content. Mine's definitely is a little bit more shock value, but I tend to still lean in on what I truly believe to be true,
Yeah.
and still pointing people to what I think the long-term best outcomes are.
Mm.
Relationships, being a more critical thinker, thinking out of the box, stuff like that. So, practitioner her asked, "Do you have or practitioner her? Do you have a book club?"
I don't have a book club. I just have the Patreon. I release a book a week. I write books with people. So, like for instance,
Mhm.
I have a book coming out about founder burnout with this guy James Oliver. It's
Mm.
called Burn Bright Not Out. I have a book coming out about raising money, raising venture capital, because I did that in the past, and I wanted to help people understand how to raise capital in 2025. So like the closest thing I have to a book club is my Patreon, because on that Patreon, I'm releasing a book basically every week at this point. So,
Wow.
um, like
Wow.
if you join me over there, you'll see me writing books, and then you'll see me also putting books out that are in the public domain that I like
Mhm.
curate. There are these books that are older that you can, like Hume's books, or you can technically just like you can download and send to people. So I put
Mhm.
those out too for people to have to read. So
Nice,
yeah,
nice.
that's
Well, listen, I got one more question for you, bro.
okay.
And
Yeah, yeah.
because
That's why.
the way first of all, your brain functions like a supercomputer. So,
Yeah.
so this is dope. I wanted to ask, what's your favorite conspiracy theories to explore that you've thought about, and which ones do you think probably are like, there's probably some truth to it?
Mm, I think the one that really messed me up is when I like started learning about the Bible generally. Like
How so?
like when I was growing up, I've read the Bible backwards, forwards. Like when I was growing up, I was homeschooled, and my mom actually made me read and journal the Bible every day. So like read and journaled the entire Bible multiple times. I did that for like
Mhm.
I think 13 years, because when I went to high school is when I finally got to stop. And so at the time, you just like read the Bible and you're reading this book, like you're just reading the book, and you never really do any like you never I never did any deeper thinking about it. So then one
Mhm.
day I read, I was like, I was hearing people talk about books that weren't in the Bible, and I was like, what are you talking about? There's these books that exist that aren't in the Bible. I was like, I learned that like Peter and other people wrote some of the books like 30 years after they like everything happened. I started
Mhm.
reading about like just all these different things and these different time frames, where now there's all these questions that I started asking, not to say that the Bible's not true, not to say
Mhm.
like that Christianity is false, but just to say like what was actually going on in the time frame and what amount of things happened leading up to basically what is the current day Bible, you
Yeah.
know? Like so, somebody said to me one time, they were like, "You really believe there was a guy in the Middle East named Matthew?" And I was like, "What? What do you mean?" They're like, "Matthew. Like, you think all those names, Yeshua, these others, you think Matthew was really out there? You really?" And I was like, "Man, I never thought about, like, Matthew is kind of a strange name." It was like it was just all these things. So since then, I've been reading so much about all the pieces of the Bible that I had never read, and reading about,
Mhm.
like, Paul's background, Peter's background, like, what were their goals and ideas? What kind of things matter to them? Because, there's, like because some of that stuff happens now, like, in the,
Yeah.
like, sometimes you hear people tell stories and you're like, "That's not how that happened. What are you talking about?" Like, I'm not saying it's wrong. Again, I'm not saying, but, like, they were all humans and they were all kind of doing that thing. And I spend a lot of time just generally, like, trying to learn as much as I can, because
Mhm.
one of the things, I don't know if you've seen one of my books, like one of my posts, but I did this post where I was like, "Hey, um, does anybody ever wonder what Jesus was doing from ages 13 to 30?"
Yeah.
And, like, all these people got in there and they were like, You atheist, this atheist." I was like, That's not actually the whole point. I just, like, for me saying that Jesus was my Lord and Savior and died on the cross for my sins, I think it's kind of crazy that I just don't care that, like, I don't get to read anything about his time from ages 13 to 30. And I heard that
Mhm.
there are books out there that I could read, and I've been like, yeah, I don't need those.
Mhm.
That's really weird, like, and so basically I've been I won't say what is the conspiracy theory specifically, like, of some of the stuff I've read, but it's just
Mhm.
like going into a whole side of the Bible that I didn't know existed, and actually learning some of the history of some of the things that happened have led me down rabbit holes of, like, conspiracy theories about why they put the Bible together a certain way, conspiracy theories about, like, what did Paul and Peter really like, what was the play, what
Mhm.
was when there were two popes and they were trying to go to war for the Holy War, and they may have changed some books around. I'm like, I don't know. Now I'm caught. Now it's like, honestly, it's one of the more fun things I've done, because the drama's crazy. It's like off the
Mhm.
chart. Found out we had
Yeah.
two popes at one point.
Yep.
Found out, like, it's just like, wow, this is something I just chose to not care about the whole time I was reading the Bible. And yeah, so that's me. Sorry, that was a whole rant,
Nah,
but
listen,
that's
that
me.
was good. This book, I mentioned it before,
Oh, wow.
and I think this is absolutely gonna be a book that you gotta add to your list.
All right.
This was the first book, and by the way, for people that didn't know, I went to a, private institution for college. It was a biblical university. I do have my bachelor's in biblical studies,
Oh, wow.
and, at one point, I was about to go all the way. I started taking biblical Greek. I was considering whether or not I would continue on to, really, really get deep in the weeds of this stuff. And what I learned, bro, is like there. And I'm going to say this because I know people. I think that Constantine. I think the Council of Nicaea. I think the errors, the contradictions. I think the various agendas, the revisionists that went back in the Old Testament and modified and edited certain things. I think, and then also when comparing and contrasting different faiths and religions historically throughout all of human history, this is probably the first guy that takes science, tradition, oral history, and all the text that we have and made sense of it. He made sense of it. And it was the thing of every person who's actually wondered or questioned certain things growing up in environments where they knew they'd be ostracized and abandoned and kicked out if they did.
Yeah.
He his videos are amazing on YouTube. Highly, bro, I'm telling you, I would love for you to kind of read this and definitely probably want to hear your thoughts about it because it changed the game. It even down to his way of interpreting his way of interpreting and reading Genesis in particular, the creation account, his interpretation, or rather translation, rather, is it appears to be much more accurate and consistent with ancient civilization's way of using those words and the creation accounts
Mm,
versus what we normally being trained as Protestants and Catholics in modern day we're trained in terms of how to view and read, like especially the Old Testament books. And and the reason why I say that is because I think he did so well at it that by the time you get to the New Testament and when Jesus is questioned or asked about certain things, some of his comments and statements on paper would look like it's a complete contradiction, but the way in which he translates things in the Old Testament, um, he basically makes it clear that people who saw what he saw, what I learned and saw in school, and talking with people who either became agnostic, became atheists, became less rigid or fundamentalist in their belief systems in terms of religion and faith, especially Christianity.
Mhm.
Um, he found a way to acknowledge all the things that we know that most people would never want to ever get that deep into the weeds with.
Mm.
He did an excellent job of just fully embracing it. He was a highly, highly reputable theologian. He was the one that would get hired to teach people how to translate text. And something happened and he got an injury and he couldn't preach. He had to stay home while he had to do rehab for like a couple months or whatever, and he just allowed his mind to just be open. And once he did, like everything that every question that he had that he always felt he wasn't allowed to ask,
Mhm.
he just allowed his brain to just go there. And what I think this was by far the best book in explanation that of someone who's done a really good, excellent job of being able to kind of hone in um what's the role of spirituality and why we're here and what to make of this being in the Old Testament versus in contrast to the being in the New Testament. And what he basically hit on was every person who asked these questions,
Mhm.
every person who went through these really difficult passages and parts, um, every person who highlighted something's off with the way in which this was created and constructed and presented to the public. um, he did an excellent job of showing from he basically said that the institution itself was designed to function somewhat like a cult,
Mm.
where if people got too close to asking questions, um, they were treated as heretics. They were called heretics.
Mhm.
They were so the faith itself, and as does many religions, they're not designed for you to actually think. They're just designed for you to, excuse me, believe,
Mhm.
and trust.
Mhm.
And the problem is that if the formation of the text, if history doesn't align exactly, if actual other things we find don't align, if they got two different manuscripts and one manuscript says this and one manuscript says that, they feel like they're going to make a choice. Like
Mhm.
and it was very interesting to see the politics that play, the Roman politics in play, the various agendas that play, the going back and reducing the role of a polytheistic approach that was littered all throughout the Old Testament. um One argument was that if the texts were much more polytheistic originally in the Old Testament, it would actually explain much more clearly why the children of Israel kept falling for these false gods, supposedly. So it was a very, very good, very, very great book. But I think it was both life changing and it gave me a peace that I don't think I was able to ever like experience. Spiritually,
Mhm.
because when you have these things in your head and you can't talk to anybody about it and you don't know where to go with this answering these type of questions that you were never allowed to discuss or bring up, because just like you said with politics, culture, environment, you've already been preconditioned with the spectrum or the Overton window of what you're allowed to believe.
Right.
And once you get to that place where you're okay with, instead of living life being like, I know,
Mhm.
you start with perhaps I don't.
Mhm.
And once that happens, man, what you're able to learn and be exposed to it's incredible. So
Right.
yeah, man, that's a book I highly, highly recommend for all of you in the chat for sure. Escaping from Eden from Paul Wallace as well. Listen, man, I've kept you long enough. I know we're gonna do this again. Heck, we may have to start a book club, bro, because you got me motivated, man. So listen, y'all, if y'all have not liked the video, please make sure that you like it. Please make sure that you go back if you got in late to kind of check the beginning and go all the way through. Send it to 2, 3, 4 different people. I hope for all of you that's been watching, I hope it's awesome to kind of get people. I hope all of you that watch this are getting comfortable with a channel like mine's and his and other guests that I brought on, the people that's just trying to make a difference. It's not always about trying to go viral, even if we do. Sometimes it's just about getting us to slow down, to learn, to listen. So listen, why don't you start with letting everybody know how they can find you and how they can support you?
I would say the number one place to find me is Django.pop site. So that's it's like my link tree. It's in all of my bios. That has like my books. I'm on Patreon. It's called Focus on Words because that's what sort of my publishing house is. And I just want to focus on the words and how much they just matter to me. And recognizing that the world, when we focus on the words, we actually take time to try to understand each other. So yeah, it's Django, DJANGO dot pop dot site. And that's where literally you can find all the links, all my books, like everything, and my Patreon and everything else. I'm just excited to connect with everybody. It's like, I feel like we can only see in others what we see in ourselves. So
Hmm.
sometimes we end up finding new parts of ourselves in others. I feel like that's that special thing. So whether you guys reach out, shoot me a message on IG or YouTube or any other places, I'm more than happy to connect.
Listen, man, I appreciate you for sliding through. I'm going to kind of wrap things up with the audience for sure. We definitely going to do this again, bro.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Listen, y'all, that was dope. That was dope. I gotta say, like, I think out of all the things that I've done with this channel so far is I've been proud of the caliber of guests that I've been able to get lucky to kind of bring in and bring on. I think that we're at a place where I think culturally, environmentally, socially, a lot of things are declining in our country. And it's nice to see people who are still good, who still care. In an environment where everybody's saying everybody hates each other, where we can only highlight and only talk about what's bad or what's wrong. It's nice that there's people who are still thinking, still questioning, still trying to grow, become better people, men and women alike. And this is I think this is just a different wave of approaching this space. And yeah, it's not the most sexiest thing. Maybe it's not the thing that's always going to go viral, but I think there's a place for this. And with all of you supporting, becoming members, paying that $2.99, this type of stuff, man, I think this is one of the areas in which there's a space for us. There's a space for changing the image of the people who are constantly talking about, oh, I'm fatigued with black people, or I'm fatigued with men versus women, or I hate men, or I hate women. I think there's a space for people that, like he said, I don't even think most people outside of people who go through bad breakups or relationship issues, I actually don't think most people are walking around dealing with half of the things that's going viral on social media. I don't think people are getting attacked all the time by black folks. I don't think people are constantly screaming and hollering about white supremacy in their real everyday lives. I don't. I think that, not that either of those things aren't true or that they aren't happening. I just think that social media is designed for things to go viral and be seen the most when they're negative, when they're toxic, when they're very jarring or shocking to see. Um, the person who volunteers their time to give out 500 turkeys for Thanksgiving, that's a quick thing, and people kind of see it and move on if they even see it. But then people who and real quick, because I've been noticing this for a minute, I'm going to get in the habit now of people who I realize have a tendency to want to approach coming into my space as an environment only through the lens of just trying to be combative. Um, chats, moderators, when y'all see this person, make sure that y'all kind of remove her, because everybody's been kind of just letting her know, like, we got a whole focus. We're trying to, do things a certain way, and she's repeatedly. So chat, not chat, mods. If y'all see her, if y'all can kind of remove her and ban her from the channel, greatly appreciate it. She's kind of been doing this for weeks and months now in terms of constantly just trying to derail things. Actually, I think I can actually ban her. Actually, I just did. So yeah, I think that there's enough things against us as people, as communities, as men and women. I think there's enough powers that be from whoever that's benefiting from this stuff. I think there's enough of those people already doing the work to where I don't need us as individuals adding and joining the team of our own demise. So read these books, man. I'm going to show them real quick again for the books he recommended. I'm personally going to start with the third one for sure. How Real is Real. The Courage to Be Disliked, and Society of the Spectacle. I'm definitely going to get this book ASAP. I'm probably going to order it tonight. And the one I recommended, I'm going to read it again myself because it was life changing. So yeah, I think we're all trying to figure it out. We're all trying to figure out life. We're all trying to figure out how to do this thing called life. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for what this channel is becoming, what it's turned into. Super, super excited. I actually have two interviews tomorrow night. One with Dr. Alveda King, who is the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King. You might probably heard of her, seen her all over the place. She's been on news platforms. She's been multiple times as a guest in the White House. And I'm honored that she has confirmed that she will absolutely be on tomorrow night as well. And then I got my guy Trey. Man, this is gonna be dope. And I got some special guests that's gonna be lined up even in the first few weeks of December as well. So, you know, January when I started the show, you can't imagine that I thought I would be at this point. We're at 32 plus thousand subscribers so far. I know we've cleared a couple million channel views just on YouTube alone. A lot of y'all aren't following me on Instagram, by the way. I got like 30,000 plus people on YouTube and like under 5,000 on Instagram. So if you are seeing this, make sure that you follow me on Instagram to kind of support and get that up as well. My hope and goal between now and the end of next year is to get my Instagram up to at least 10,000 subscribers. And I got some projects in the works, man. And once that stuff is done and it's official and it's good to go, I can't wait to kind of let y'all know what your boy has planned. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of people talk about, oh, the podcast people, all they do is talk and they're not about this, they're not about that. Okay, I've heard what you said, and although I've already started doing a lot of actionable things, both in my personal life and with my um, in my actual field itself, I'm going to be doing more and more things that I think are going to be truly practical and helpful. One announcement is going to be specifically to the ladies in the very near future after I finish collaborating with a couple people who y'all already met and I brought on the show. Once we have that good to go and official, and when I launch it, the ladies, some are going to love it, some are going to hate it, but you can't say that I didn't do what I could to try to help both men and women to the degree that I think I'm capable of. And as well as my own personal project that I've been thinking about for 4 or 5 years now. I'm going to put it together, and when it's done, I hope that you all receive it, and it'll be my gift to those that I think maybe think that it could be helpful and needed. So listen, y'all, read, pray, serve, be thankful for what you got, and let's love on each other. We're in an environment where we're constantly tricked and paid to hate. So I think that if we can click on more stuff like this, not just my content, but other people's stuff that's more positive, that's more uplifting, that's helping us to be more productive, smarter, wiser, stronger. I think we can go against the algorithm. We can create our own algorithm. And I think that, you know, I still have hope. Even with everybody saying everything's cooked and everything's just, you never know. You never know. Maybe this isn't the end of our story as a nation. Maybe as a society and as a culture. Maybe it's not the end. Maybe there's a renaissance to come. You never know. And maybe this is one of those things that can kind of help push us in that direction for sure. So listen, y'all, have a good night. Like I said, I got back-to-back live shows coming up, one after the other. So stay tuned because your boy is going to be hitting the ground running with that tomorrow. I hope that y'all enjoyed this, brother Django. Make sure you check out the links. Make sure that you support him, follow him for sure. Appreciate you, Katie, for that as well. Listen, y'all. So at the end of the day, again, like if you haven't liked this video, make sure you send it to at least 2 or 3 people. Feel free to send to the super chat if you haven't done so. And like I said, tomorrow I got back to back. This is my first time doing 2 lives in the same evening. So best believe your boy is gonna be rocked out for sure. And again, it's like the idea that I can get Dr. Alveda King, who again is the niece and highly reputable, well-known political figure and person who stood on some incredible principles and stood against attacks and a whole host of things. And she's a courageous woman. And for me to get blessed with her being able to come on the channel is an honor, as well as a guy that's getting more and more into the content creation space, who I think is also Just like the Django tonight, a very deep thinker, um, works in a field that I think he's just, you'll see, man. I'm excited. I'm hopeful. And listen, y'all, enjoy y'all family this week. I know everybody maybe doesn't have the best, happiest of personal situations. Family may be not always what you want it to be, and friends may not always move how you would hope and wish that they could, but you're here. You're here. So if at anything, just be thankful for the fact that you're here and you still have an opportunity to do something with your life. And I hope that me and all the guests that I brought on, that we got an opportunity to just sow seeds into the growth of your destiny. So listen, y'all, enjoy y'all time. Love y'all. Uh, Become a subscriber to the channel if you haven't done so. And listen, y'all, more to come tomorrow and Wednesday as well. So stay tuned, and please, please, please hype this video up if you have not done so. As soon as it ends, swipe over on the comment section towards the right and hype up the video, and let's change the algorithm. Let's boost it up. Let's change the narrative of how we're seen as people, as a culture, as Americans, as men, as women. Let's take the bulls by the horn, and let's not let the internet dictate who we are anymore. Let's actually decide what it is that we want to be, and let's start displaying that. So hype it up, hype it up, hype it up. Have a good night, y'all. Stay tuned, and best believe I got more to come. Got some out. Peace.